Hey, Mark, today we are talking about the 200 SMA. We're going to deep dive into this because I think it's interesting. The S&P and Nasdaq rose to new record highs. That's the 50th record high for the S&P so far this year. Nearly all global equity indexes are experiencing a rise in the 200-day moving average. So tell me, what is the 200 SMA, and is this a metric that Mark DiOrio pays attention to?
Yeah, so the 200-day SMA stands for simple moving average. So what you do is you calculate the last 200 days of prices and then divide by 200, and that's a plot. And then you keep doing that each and every day. What it is a smooth trend line, and a lot smoother than looking at the daily prices, which zig and zag every day. And so sometimes it's hard to pick out a trend if you look too closely at it. But the 200 days trying to give you a way to zoom out and see whether it's heading higher or heading lower. It is definitely an indicator we watch just to be aware of what type of the overriding theme is in the market. Is it heading higher? Is it heading lower? And really it's because statistics has shown when the market is trading above its 200-day moving average, that you have a higher likelihood of continued gains and lower volatility. But when it starts to go below the 200-day moving average, actually gains start to look very muted. But the real key is volatility spikes, meaning there's a lot of challenges in the marketplace. And sometimes it's not clear from the narrative what's driving it, but it's definitely a pattern that we look at.
Okay, so now let's take a closer look. Mark, you tell me if you see a pattern here as we're looking at it. What do you take away from this graph?
Well, this is a great chart in showing that all countries are participating, meaning it shows at the top there, that blue at the bottom clip, 100% of the countries, their moving average is heading higher, suggesting higher prices or an uptrend. Now, that doesn't mean tomorrow or next week or next month you can't have a normal pullback or correction. It means that the overall or intermediate trend is higher. And when you have more countries or markets participating, that really reinforces the rally or that momentum. So even in the short term, if we see some speed bumps along the way, I would be mindful that the overall trend is still higher, and this is likely to resume after any short-term turbulence kind of wears off.
Okay. So this has been the 5th longest streak of uninterrupted uptrends in global markets, which is the longest streak in 35 years. So what do you think is behind that momentum? And of all the countries you mentioned, the one who's sitting out this game is China. Why?
Well, so if we recall the start of this rally, it was big fiscal and monetary thrust and stimulus that came into the market and really set this off, this rally, the recovery rally going. But then what's really continued the rally is that earnings have been very strong. So earnings are surprised to the upside. And this has been an excellent story for the market and for stocks and for investors overall, that although we thought the markets were going to recover with the economy, the earnings have really driven the last price trend, especially these last several months with strong earnings. Now, China has set out, like you mentioned, and it actually has started to hurt emerging markets. China's the largest economy in emerging markets, of course, but they've really been really since almost September of last year, starting to fade pretty heavily. And part of it's their policy. It's a different culture in terms of stock ownership. And I use maybe quotations around ownership because you're not really owning stocks like you are in the US. And so they're less than favorable towards capitalism in terms of corporations and your ownership of those stocks. So that has really come under question of what that policy is. In addition, the US has taken a little bit harder stance, both administrations, mind you, about what is China doing and what their policy is overall from a shareholder perspective.
Okay, if I want to sound smart, do I say 200 SMA or do I just say SMA?
You can say the 200-day, but or the 200-day MA, moving average, but all of those are acceptable.
Thank you. All right, now I know what to say at cocktail parties when I'm talking about it. This is perfect. Mark, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Erin.